Legend has it, on a spring day in the early 14th century, Gediminas, Grand Duke of Lithuania, led a hunting party east from his castle at Karnave. He discovered a pristine the confluence of two rivers and set up camp. That night, Gediminas was alarmed in his sleep by the thundering howl of an iron wolf atop the nearby hill. A sage told Gediminas the dream meant he would build a castle on that hill, as strong as the iron wolf, and a city below whose fame would resound like the wolf's mighty howl. Gediminas sent letters throughout Europe, inviting merchants and tradesmen, soldiers and scholars, men of all nations and faiths, to come build Lithuania's new capital city. A city where people prospered together for centuries, in a land of justice and tolerance, uniting East and West. Today, this capital is waiting for you to discover. Vilnius, the symbol of a new Europe. Gediminas not only made Vilnius capital of Lithuania, but established the Grand Duchy's successful policies of religious freedom, individual rights, and even low taxes. Gediminas' sons Kęstutis and Algirdas defeated the Tatar horde, repelled over 100 attacks by the Teutonic Order, and marched their armies to Moscow. From their castle in Trakai, as well as their palace in Vilnius, the Grand Dukes ruled with a combination of military might, skilled diplomacy, and tolerance. In the war-torn Middle Ages, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania was a haven of stability in Europe, offering protection from religious persecution and marauding foreign armies. The Grand Dukes became the kings of Poland and adopted Christianity when Grand Duke Jogaila married the Polish princess Jadwiga in 1386. This Jagiellonian dynasty was Europe's leading royal family for the next 2 centuries. Gediminas' grandsons, King Jogaila and Grand Duke Vytautas, made Lithuania a great power. Together, Vytautas and Jogaila led an alliance of armies. Poles, Tatars, Czechs, Hungarians, Russians, all led by the Lithuanians that decisively defeated the Teutonic Knights at the Battle of Žalgiris in 1410. Žalgiris spelled the end of this powerful German military order and opened the way for Lithuania's further expansion from the Baltic to the Black Sea. Lithuania's open policies and vast size encouraged commerce between East and West, and the nation prospered, growing to become the largest state in Europe. By the time of Grand Duke Žygimantas Augustus in the 16th century, Vilnius had become an important European cultural center. The Duke and his court, conversant in Latin, German, and Italian, received visiting humanist philosophers and contemporary artists, playwrights, and writers at his Renaissance-style palace, now in ruins. Though his mother was Italian and his first wife a Habsburg, the Duke's greatest love was for a Lithuanian, Barbora Radvilaitė, his second wife. Her tragic, early death left the Duke heartbroken and childless, and the Jagiellonian dynasty, the descendants of Gediminas, came to an end. Queen Barbora, along with 2 Grand Dukes, is buried in a crypt beneath the cathedral. Gediminas' castle overlooks his city's main street, Gedimino Prospect, a symbol of Vilnius' position between East and West, between old and new. It connects the classical western portico of the National Cathedral with the silver domes of an Eastern Orthodox church, former ducal buildings with the modern parliament. Below the tower to the west is Vilnius's oldest street, Pilies, the entrance to Old Town. The former homes of merchants, monks, and nobles, in styles from the 16th to the 19th century, are now being rapidly restored. Old Town is a labyrinth of courts and squares, which can charm and sometimes confuse the first-time visitor. The edge of Old Town is marked by remnants of the old city wall, Auschrosswarte, the only remaining city gate, and the artillery bastion. This huge Old Town, among the largest in Europe, survived the Grand Duchy's decline. Increasingly weak foreign Grand Dukes, social divisiveness, plagues, and unsuccessful wars finally ended in the partition of Lithuania and Poland. Tsarist Russian rule ended with the revolution, and newly independent Lithuania made Vilnius its capital, but Poland soon occupied the city. Lithuania got Vilnius back in 1939, after Hitler and Stalin defeated Poland. In 1940, Stalin forced Lithuania to join the Soviet Union. A new flag, a new occupation. The next year, Hitler invaded. Another flag, another occupier of Gediminas' city. Stalin's armies returned in 1944, raised their flag again over the castle, and the city endured more years of foreign rule. Finally, in 1990, as the Soviet Empire crumbled, Lithuania regained her independence, her heritage, and her capital. Now the Lithuanian flag flies over Gediminas' castle, overlooking Vilnius, the city by the two rivers, whose waters flow on through Lithuania to the Baltic Sea. Vilnius is a city of churches. More than 30 churches crowd Old Town, one of the highest concentrations in Europe. Vilnius's skyline is prickled with spires. Wrought iron crosses, done in the folk style, look down from each. Vilnius residents tell visitors to step into the center of any street, look up, and they are bound to see a cross. Built in 1320, St. Nicholas is the oldest church in Lithuania. The church shares many features in common with St. Anne's. Both were built in the same century and are fine examples of Gothic brickwork. St. Bernardine's, just behind St. Anne's, is the largest Gothic church in Vilnius. St. Anne's is a Gothic treasure, built from 33 kinds of brick. Napoleon, on his way to Moscow, is said to have admired St. Anne so much that he wished he could take the church back to Paris. Vilnius is crowned by its Saint Casimir. Prince Casimir Jogaila has inspired more Baroque architecture in Vilnius than anyone else. His devotion and early death after renouncing the throne inspired the love of a newly Catholic Lithuania. It was believed that he, even after death, miraculously cured the faithful. Casimir was canonized and became the patron saint of Lithuania. St. Casimir's Church, the oldest Baroque church in Vilnius, is renowned for its acoustics and hosts several concerts every week. In the cathedral, St. Casimir's Chapel is the most visited site. The saint's remains lie in a silver sarcophagus. Statues of Grand Dukes and nobles are joined by paintings depicting scenes from St. Casimir's life. It is a chapel dear to both Poles and Lithuanians, as is Casimir, the patron saint of Lithuania. The many spectacular churches in Vilnius, such as St. Peter's and Paul's, reflect both the Grand Duchy's wealth and its adoption of diverse foreign styles. Decorating the principal nave are a series of beautiful frescoes depicting the Acts of the Two Apostles. The ship chandelier symbolizes the journeys across the Mediterranean by the Church Fathers. More than 2,000 figures adorn the interior, all in white as if the ceiling itself were a cloud. Like the Vilnius Cathedral, St. Peter and Paul's was built on the site of a former pagan temple. St. Peter and Paul's is probably the finest example of Baroque architecture in all of Lithuania. Folk culture in Lithuania draws on thousands of years of tradition. Handmade sashes, or juosta, have been ritual gifts for many centuries, and other crafts like weaving are not only folk art, but living family traditions. Lithuanian is an ancient language, and it was preserved in folk songs and folk tales. More than 1 million folk songs have been documented, and hundreds of folk groups are active around the country. Christian and pre-Christian traditions have evolved into festivals, like St. Casimir's Fair before Lent. Tens of thousands crowd the streets of Old Town to celebrate and show their fine crafts and folk art. Pre-Christian customs are also kept alive. Lithuania converted to Christianity only in the 14th and 15th centuries, the last country in Europe. There are a number of sites at which pre-Christian Lithuanians celebrated. On Pilies Street and on Gediminas Hill, one of the most sacred places for the ancient culture. Today, Catholicism dominates. Verbos, or palms made from dried flowers and plants, symbolize rebirth and are a traditional springtime gift. Most Lithuanians are Catholics. Believers fill churches every Sunday, and churches overflow on holidays like Palm Sunday. And like other countries, Lithuanians see off winter with a Shrovetide Fair, a favorite of children. Vilnius is a university town. 40,000 students attend 11 institutions. The Vilnius Art Academy is internationally renowned, while the Lithuanian Music Academy ranks among the finest conservatories in Europe. But the grandest tradition belongs to Vilnius University, one of the oldest in the region. Founded in 1579 by Jesuits and chartered by the Grand Duke, Vilnius University became a center for research and publishing. The Mažvydas Catechism, a volume containing hymns and poetry, was the first book published in the Lithuanian language. It began a long tradition of Lithuanian letters. Many of these monuments of Lithuanian literature are preserved and studied in the university library. Vilnius University students study scores of disciplines, from the hard sciences to philosophy, on campuses throughout the city. The university's philology faculty attracts scholars from around the world, where they study Indo-European languages, including the oldest, Lithuanian. Russian religion and culture have contributed to Vilnius's cosmopolitan life for centuries. Of the 7 Orthodox churches in Vilnius, Several date back to the 14th century. Since the Grand Duchy encompassed much of Western Russia, including the ancient Russian capital of Kiev, Vilnius was an important Russian cultural and religious center. And today, the city's Orthodox churches are again a part of the international Orthodox community and have been visited by the Patriarch of Moscow. For centuries, Vilnius, or Vilno in Polish, was a source of Polish faith and culture that rivaled Krakow. Both cities were the political capital of the combined Lithuanian-Polish Republic, or Rzeczpospolita. Both Adam Mickiewicz, the father of Polish Romanticism who called Lithuania his fatherland, and Czesław Miłosz, Nobel laureate, were Vilnius University graduates. Today, many churches hold masses in both Lithuanian and Polish. The staunchly Catholic Polish community feels especially close to the first Polish Pope, John Paul II, who has visited Vilnius. Several Vilnius churches remain centers of spiritual life. All Saints, dominating Rūdninkų Square, and Holy Spirit, one of the finest examples of Vilnius Baroque. But the focal point of the Polish faithful is the Gates of Dawn. Tens of thousands of Polish pilgrims each year are joined by Christians of many other nations in praying before the gilded painting of the Mother and Child. The walls are covered by silver prayer requests dating from as far back as the 17th century. This Lithuanian chapel is a symbol of unity in faith, a famous shrine for Catholic and Eastern Orthodox believers worldwide. Vilna, the Jerusalem of the North. For European Jews, that was Vilnius when Lithuanians ruled Lithuania. Gediminas' invitation was extended to all nations and faiths. Given protection and granted self-rule, the Jewish community in Lithuania, unlike in much of Europe, flourished under a tolerant and supportive government. And by the turn of the 20th century, Vilnius had become the world center of Yiddish culture and Talmudic scholarship. The arts and sciences also thrived. Freud and Einstein were board members of the Vilnius Jewish Scientific Institute. And the Lithuanian Jewish community gave Jascha Heifetz, Jacques Lipschitz, and Emanuel Levinas to world culture. Then, World War II. Stalin's Red Army occupies Lithuania, and the KGB kills or deports thousands of Lithuania's leaders, liquidating government and shattering the social order. In 1941, Hitler attacks Stalin, and the German army overruns Lithuania. Then, the Nazis, the ghettos, and the calculated chaos of the Holocaust. The SS, with some local collaborators, executed 200,000 Jews at places like Panare outside Vilnius. They murdered more than 9 out of 10 Lithuanian Jews. Vilnius is haunted with its history.
Mit der Freiheit kommt der Tate, schlafsche Kind meins schlaf. Wie die Willie, aber freite, wie die Bäume grün beneite, leucht schon Freiheitslicht auf dein Gesicht, auf dein Gesicht.
Today, the Jewish community in Vilnius is small, but their great past is still revered. Their contribution to cultural life is significant. The living memory, the courage of this community is their legacy for the peaceful future of Lithuania and of Europe. The return of the Red Army at World War II's end brought not liberation, but a slave labor camp or a frozen grave for the tens of thousands of Lithuanians deported by Stalin. Entire families were sent east to the Gulag. Toiling on railroads, in forests, and in mines, after 10, even 25 years of exile, only some were allowed to go home. Rather than submit to terror, thousands took to the forests. They organized an army across the country. They fought to keep Lithuania independent, determined to keep their freedom, their families, and their farms. This partisan army, the Forest Brothers, fought the foreign invaders and their local collaborators for almost 10 years. Today, right in the center of Vilnius, you can witness this history. A once infamous entrance to the Gulag archipelago, the Vilnius KGB headquarters and prison is now a museum unique in the world. Former partisans and prisoners lead you through their story of repression, Resistance and Sacrifice.
Nuo 44 metų iki 90 metų per šitą visą laikotarpį Lietuvoje buvo įkalinta, sudaryta bylų 200 100. 141 tūkstantis žmonių teistų buvo ištremta už Respublikos ribų. Visi kiti buvo Lietuvoje kalinami Lietuvos lageriuose. Okupacijos metu Lietuvoje buvo kas trečias žmogus pavergtas represijos, tame tarpe ir aš šitoje kameroje esu buvęs. Čia mes buvome užregistruoti, nufotografuoti prieš siunčiant į kalėjimą, į darbą lagerius. Čia KGB darbuotojų poilsio kambarys. 91 metais jie netgi bandė sunaikinti įrodymus to, kas čia atsitiko. Kartais jie sugrūsdavo 20 žmonių kameroje. Pro langą mes netgi galėdavom kartais matyti žmonių einančių šaligatvių kojas. Kai aš sėdėjau 45 metais, tai šitoje kameroje buvo mirtininkai. Mirtininkai sėdėjo kameroje. Kamera, kur pravesdavo tardymus tiem žmonėms, kurie negali užlipti į 2-3 aukštą, fiziškai yra suluošinti. Tai ateidavo tardytojas, šičia vietoje pravesdavo tardymus. Toliau tai paprasta kamera, vaikydavo šičia. Dar toliau yra slopi karceriai, į vandenį kišdavo, išremta iki baltinių ir įmeta į vandenį stovėti. Principas toks, ar pasakok, ką jie klausia, arba nestovėk tol, kol nugriusi. Čia yra spec kamera, sienos minkštos išklotos, ant sienų yra palikta kraujo žymės nuo kankinimų. Jie apvelka ant tavęs randamuosius marškinius ir muša tave. Ir nieks negalvoja girdėti tavo šauksmų. Praleidžiau keletą savaičių izoliuotoje kameroje. Čia buvo nežmoniškai šalta. Jie privertė mane sėdėti valandas šito suolo kraštinėme kampe. Iki tol, kol visas mano kūnas degė nuo skausmo.
46 metais vyskupas Borusevičius čia sėdėjo 11 kameroje 6 mėnesius. Iš tos kameros buvo išverstas ir sušaudytas šitose patalpose. Jis yra palaidotas Tuskulėnuose.
Čia yra kalėjimo kiemas, kur mes galėjome pakvėpuoti grynu oru. Sargyba neleisdavo mums pažiūrėti į viršų. Jei mes tą padarytume, eitume į izoliuotą kamerą. Jie bandė sunaikinti mus, sunaikinti Lietuvą, mūsų kalbą, kultūrą. Jie atėmė iš mūsų laisvę, bandė atimti mūsų orumą. KGB nužudė daug nekaltų žmonių. Jie siuntė mus į Sovietų Sąjungos lagerius. Ten buvo šimtai lagerių ir kalėjimų. Mes buvome išmėtyti visur, bet lietuviai paliko savo žymes kiekviename kalėjime arba darbo lageryje. Mes niekada nepamiršime, kad jie kovojo už savo tėvynę. Visos tos vietovės turi vardus. O mes žinome visų lietuvių vardus, kurie ten mirė.
Decades of repression could not stamp out an increasingly vocal, dissident movement in Lithuania. The Soviet utopian suburbs of Vilnius became not the peaceful bedroom communities they were designed to be, but the scene of the Soviet Union's demise and Lithuania's most heroic hour. After Lithuania declared its independence in March of 1990, the Red Army tightened its hold. The Vilnius television tower, offering command of the country's broadcast media, became crucial to the independence movement. And in the days leading up to January 13, 1991, the army moved in to surround the TV tower. Refusing to submit to the putsch, thousands of unarmed citizens surrounded the tower and other important state buildings. They put their bodies in front of tanks and did not run when bullets were fired into the crowd. "14 died on Bloody Sunday, and the world saw that Lithuania's sacrifice would help bring down the Soviet Union." The remains of 50 years of occupation, relegated to a junkyard on the edge of town. Lithuania's great and sometimes turbulent history is written in Vilnius itself, in its churches and monuments. But Vilnius today, again free and independent, looks forward. Vilnius is a symbol of rebirth, now part of the new Europe.